All right. Good morning, everybody. It's your favorite host, Tim and Tim. We're finally back after a nice long vacation in Hawaii, and Tim even flew out there and joined me for a week. It's good to be back in the office and doing these podcasts again. I absolutely love doing this. So, Tim, how you doing today?
I can't complain, man. Just trying to get back on the East Coast time.
Dude, yeah, it's taken me like a week to kind of readjust back to the time zone. But
Yeah.
hey, I see we got the memo with the Reds today. Mine's a little bit more faded. It's a little more pink.
Yeah,
I'm gonna have to.
I think you got the Heather Cardinal there, maybe. I'm not sure.
All right. We got our special guest with us today, a good friend of mine that I've known for quite a few years now, and just recently used his services for the first time. Scott Hanis, he's with Fortitude HR Solutions. Scott was introduced to me at Tim Brotz's event at the Legacy Lodge almost 2 years ago. Before that, we've known each other on social media and kind of have interacted a little bit that way. But Scott, thanks for coming on the show today. And why don't you, for those that don't know who you are, why don't you give a little introduction about who you are and what you do and your background and everybody you're connected with, because you're the guy.
Well, thank you, Tim and Tim, for having me. Thanks for the opportunity. I definitely appreciate it. So yeah, I own a company called Fortitude HR Solutions. We do HR and business consulting for clients all across the United States. And we also do full service recruiting all across the United States. Been in human resources for 18 years. Prior to me starting Fortitude HR Solutions now 4 years ago, I worked for a private equity firm. And so a lot of the stuff in the real estate world with due diligence and acquiring properties is very similar to buying businesses with due diligence and acquiring businesses. So I'm able to connect and talk, shop on a deeper level with a lot of people in the real estate investment community. Yeah, you mentioned Tim Brotz. Tim's a neighbor of mine here in Cleveland, Ohio, where I live. And I also, I know a lot of people in the real estate industry. I don't like to name drop, but Mark Evans, I'm going to be at one of his events on Friday that Tim and him are hosting, and I'll be up on the stage as one of the panel speakers. So I always look to add value and try to help people. That's what kind of I'm all about. And so again, I appreciate the opportunity to be here today with both of you.
Yeah, man. Hey, always appreciative of what you bring to the table, because you have a completely different kind of a viewpoint of things. And man, I have to say, when we used your services to find our employee for Vive Property Management, we bounced a lot of things off you, and you were like, "Hey, you knuckleheads, you don't do it that way. This doesn't make any sense." But it's nice, right? I mean, that's ultimately what you're here for. Is that you're here to help people not make mistakes. And I mean, Tim Vest's wife, she's in HR, and HR issues can wrap you up in a bad way really quickly. So always appreciative of the insight there, and recommend anybody that's looking for HR services. Always recommend Scott to everybody. So
Yeah, I can't second that enough, guys. And Scott, like Tim's talking about, it was awesome kind of working with you. Man, because Tim, when we first started, I was like, no, we can go find somebody. We can go find somebody, right? And then quickly found out that my expectations were not correct.
Yeah, I
So
mean, I think that everybody thinks that they can do it, and you can, right? I mean, but you have to spend a lot of time, energy, and effort. And do you have that time, energy, and effort? You guys are both thriving entrepreneurs. You do coaching, consulting. You have your own properties. You have your own lives, and there's only so many hours in the day, right? I mean, I think all three of us can agree, time is the most precious, gift that we're given, and so why not partner with the who that can find you the how and help you get that role done. And that's what we did at Fortitude for both of you. So
well, and then also level setting expectations on that who, right? Because I had my ideas of what we were looking for and what that person should be, how they should be compensated. Let's just be right.
Mhm.
Let's just be transparent here. And you quickly, when we started describing that, you were quickly like, no, what you're looking for, that's you need to reset those expectations a little bit, right? So it's really, if we had not gone this route, right, I'd probably still be looking and very frustrated that I couldn't find somebody to do what I needed them to do for that level, right? So that was a
yeah,
really good conversation.
no, and I appreciate it. And I appreciate how open both of you were to that, because a lot of entrepreneurs and business owners, they're like, well, what does this HR person know? And, HR kind of gets, thrown in with the Tobys from the office, and the no fun police and all these different myths and all these things. So I appreciate that. Like, we had a really good two-way conversation, and we were all looking for, I like to call it the win-win-win, right? Where the candidate wins, the client wins, and then we win as a company. So that's usually the best approach. And, when you hire people, you have to understand what their expectations are, where they want to be at, what type of value do they bring to your pain points that you have in the organization. And then I think the big thing really is people live up and live down to expectations. That's a Scott Hanis quote. You can steal it as long as you give me credit. But with that, I think the important thing is if you said you wanted to pay someone 50 grand and the market says 80 grand is the salary range, like you're going to get a C-level player all day, typically at a 50K range. If you pay the 80, you're going to be able to get a much higher caliber person. And so, you need to figure out, if you're hiring people or you're making your first hire, what's your competitive advantage? What do you offer that no one else does? Is it flexibility? Is it time off? Do they get to work remote? I mean, those are all things that, unfortunately, with the COVID pandemic, a lot of people have now with the bigger companies. But what is your environment? What are your values? Like, how does that align with the candidates? All those things need to be a part of the hiring process. It's not just taking a body and putting a body in a slot or a position anymore. You really got to get to know the candidate. You got to understand their wants and their desires, and where do they want to grow, and where does that company fit into that, and where can the company help them elevate to? Because most people don't want to be stuck in the same boring job Monday through Friday. And I know with the hire that we helped you with, I mean, she has opportunities to grow as the company grows, and that's what people want. So I'm going off on a tangent. I'm
no, absolutely not a tangent.
No, and it's funny. It's funny how when you say it, it makes so much sense because I managed development teams forever, and I knew that if I was looking for a developer and I was going to pay $25 an hour, I was going to get $25 an hour code, right? But if I paid $50 an hour, I knew the code would be way, way better, probably end up saving me money in the long run. And it's funny how, like, I knew that there, but over here, it just didn't register, right? Not until you started talking about it. And you're like, yeah, you could probably go get this person, but they're not going to do what you want them to do.
It's also a little different when it's your money fronting the payroll bill versus a corporation's money fronting the payroll bill.
Yeah.
I was just going to say that. Like, we get into that. I mean, and everybody does, and I'm an entrepreneur too, and a business owner. Like, we get into a little bit of our heads, right? And we get that scarcity mindset, and what can I afford? And Dennis, who you interacted with too, our recruiting and sales manager, he always looks at it like, you can't afford not to have that position filled, because what can it save you, or what can that position make you? And so, like, there's an investment to using a recruiting firm. There's also an investment to paying someone a higher wage. But what's that return on investment? And again, is it time? Is it money? Is it, cost savings? Is it, revenue generation? Is it the bottom line where they can save you money so you're making more profit? That's the way we need to look at things. And it's really hard to do that, especially when it's your first hire.
Right. Yeah. Really good. Really, really good point. So thanks for helping us through that.
Thanks for straightening us out.
Yeah.
No, I'm glad that we were able to help out, and I'm glad she's doing amazing. That's really good to hear. So
yeah, definitely. So, all right, Scott. So what are some of the things, like, what are the major pitfalls that you see? I mean, obviously you've already coached us through some things that we could have wrapped ourselves up in. What are some other things that maybe an aspiring business owner out there that's looking to hire somebody, what is something like, what are the major pitfalls that they have to avoid so that they make sure that they find the right person for the right seat? Because, I really, pay aside, right? Because everyone knows, like, really at the root of everything at the end of the day is how much am I going to get paid, and how much paid time I'm off am I going to get, benefits, all that kind of stuff. What are some other words of advice from an HR consultant's point of view of things people need to be aware of or cognizant of when they're going through the hiring process?
Yeah, that's a great question, Tim. I would definitely say, again, it goes back to setting expectations, clear communication, defining the role and responsibility, knowing what does that job description look like. I mean, like when we, you both came to us, I wrote, like, I drafted a job description. You're like, well, I think we missed this or this. And so we need to have that two-way kind of conversation, but setting clear, roles and responsibilities, I think, is super important. And then I would also say giving them goals and objectives. Like, people typically are goal oriented. I know I am personally. So I want to know, like, what value am I creating and what am I doing each day? So I see that's a big pitfall that a lot of business owners don't do, is they don't create those goals or objectives, or they don't have, like, the metrics, the KPIs, the key performance indicators or key process indicators, whatever you want to call it, but having, like, the daily heartbeat of how someone's performing. Another big pitfall is, I think, communication. I see a lot of entrepreneurs struggle with the communication because people start their own businesses because they want their time back, right? Time is, again, precious commodity, precious resource. But what happens is when you're starting to build and grow and scale a company, I don't care who you are, you need to spend more than probably 4 hours a week on your job and on your business. Like, I mean, you can get to that, absolutely, but you got to build the team first, and you got to put the blood, sweat, and tears into it. And so, like, even if you have a high performing employee or team member, you got to spend time with that person. You got to build the relationship. You got to share your vision. You got to talk about your values and, again, how they play into that. And again, what are the opportunities for that person to grow? So I'm a huge proponent, some of the stuff, like, I've never, I don't do traction, but like some of the same concepts, it's great that Gino Wickman talks about some of the same stuff that I've done in my corporate career, and maybe Tim, both of you have done in your corporate careers. But like the daily huddle meetings, I think are critical. Just, what's going on in each department, 15 minutes or less, talking about, again, key areas in the business. What do you need help from other people on the team? And where am I going to be at as the leader? Then I like to do a weekly leadership meeting. Again, looking at those KPIs in detail. How are we performing towards our goals and objectives? What's going on in the business? What's going on in each of the departments? How can we help one another? And again, where are we performing towards not only the goals and objectives, but the open action items we had from the previous meeting? And then if there's any like wins, I think people, I went through a near death experience 2 years ago, right? And so to me, like, gratitude and being thankful. So starting those meetings with the right tone from a facilitation standpoint, like, what are we grateful for? How do we live out our values this week? I think just sharing some of that and, again, getting to know the team members is super, super important. Again, so building those relationships. And then the last meeting that I think needs to happen is like a one-on-one meeting. And that should be done minimum once a month. And it should be a check-in conversation, whether you're having coffee or you're doing a Zoom meeting, or you're going to lunch with somebody. But talk uninterrupted. Don't be on your cell phone. Don't be on the computer. Don't take calls. Give them your undivided attention and talk to them about, again, what are they doing really well? Where do you see that they need to improve? Again, how are they performing towards their goals and objectives? And what do you need from me as your leader? Like, I think we forget, just because we think we're or we are the owners of the business, we think that we don't need to be the leader. But guess what? You need to be the leader. And sometimes we need to look in the mirror and say, you know what? I didn't give that person clear communication. I didn't set them up for success. I didn't have a really good onboarding process. And so why is that person struggling, or why are they failing? And is it their fault or is it my fault? And sometimes we need to look in the mirror and ask that hard question. So I see that as another pitfall too, just like the entire onboarding process and how much time do we spend with our new hires. So that would be something else that I would definitely, mention. So when someone starts, like, I like to have like their laptop ready, their emails, all their computer logins. If you're getting business cards, have the business cards. You both got swag on today, like the swag they should have, so they feel really welcomed and part of the team. Think about this: when you hire a new employee, it's like going to a new school, right? They don't know anybody on the team. There's a fear. Like, starting a new job is one of the most 7 stressful things that someone goes through in life, besides maybe divorce or marriage or birth of a child, all these different things that happen, selling or buying a home. And so with that, we want to make sure we ease the pressure and we make them feel really welcome as part of that onboarding process. So I see that as a big struggle, or a pitfall that a lot of business owners go through. And then again, how do we acclimate them to the team so that they feel like they have ownership and responsibility of their core function? A lot of times business owners want to hold on to the reins, right? They don't want to let go of things because I'm the only one that can do it this good or this well. And so with that, we got to empower our team to make mistakes and to do things. And even if they do it at 50% of your capacity or your ability in the beginning, it's still better than you having to do it by yourself, right? And so again, they can learn from that. Again, if we clearly communicate and we provide training and resources and support for them, they're going to be way more successful than if we just throw them to the wolves, right? A lot of companies that I work with in the beginning, they're doing that process and they're like, Scott, why do I have turnover? Or why is this happening? And because a lot of these are good businesses and good business owners, they're just failing on the onboarding process and they're not providing the support and resources. So again, I went off on a huge tangent, but those are probably the 4 or 5 big pitfalls that I see a lot of organizations go through when they're onboarding or hiring, an employee or a team member.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead. Yeah, that's really good. That's really good feedback. I got to be honest. If Tim and I like to be transparent, I think we learned a lot, right, with this first employee about the onboarding process, because we definitely have room to grow there. Fortunately for us, I think Tim and I were high touch, right? So we were high touch, we were available, and she's strong, right? She's resilient. So we were able to get through it. But it definitely pointed out some things like, hey, if we're going to do this, we need to address this, right? Like we need to address this. We need some other processes as well. So like I'm literally glad that we're recording this because I'm going to go back because I would love to be taking notes right now. But then I can't hear what you're saying. So I'm going to go back and replay this because there's notes here that I'm going to be taking. And, Tim, we will follow up and chat about this stuff, man.
Oh,
You guys
absolutely. I
also
mean,
call me.
nothing speaks better to it than experience, right? So, we were very high touch with the first employee and kind of fumbled our way through payroll and fumbling our way through like the computer setups. And we're still working on some of the Microsoft Office corporate accounts and like things that we didn't really know that we needed until they started to come up. And, there's some bumps and bruises along the way. And, that was part of the onboarding goals. It was like, hey, we know that this is a brand new company and we're putting the right person in the right seat that's got 20 plus years of experience doing this stuff, and we're here to support you with whatever you need. And it's interesting to hear about how the one point that you brought up was the entrepreneurs sometimes don't want to let go of the reins, but there's also a balance of letting go of the reins, but also not letting go so much that they're just free to do whatever they want. Right. Because, the whole 4-hour work week thing that you were kind of mentioning. So if you take those two things together and it's like, oh, actually, yeah, you do need to be present. You just need to be clear as of what you've said. You should be clear on whose roles and responsibilities or who's doing what. Right. And if you give the role of somebody to take care of this job, don't answer a question with an answer. Answer a question with another question, right? And that's what I think that we're pretty good at being, coming from manager positions in the W-2 world. We've learned kind of those aspects, but it's a whole different environment now where we didn't have like an HR department to onboard people to make sure all of those things that you said is already put in place. We're like, oh, dang, that's on us now. So, taking notes and kind of going back and figuring out and just, trying to be 1% better every day as we go through this over and over and over again. The process will get better. It'll get a little bit more refined. And hey, Rome wasn't built in a day, but we're going to fix it, right? As these fires and these problems come up, we just fix it. We plug the hole. We say, all right, well, what do we need to do to prevent this hole from opening back up again? And you just continue to learn and grow from there. It's when you start making the same mistake twice, you got a real problem. But thankful for, obviously for Tim and, we got a great partnership in order to kind of plug holes, kind of divide and conquer, right? Because there's a lot of holes in that ship when you first get sailing.
Oh yeah. Yeah. We're definitely sticking some fingers in the dam right now. Right. So
running out of toes.
Well, and gentlemen, I would also say I think being vulnerable is a really strong asset of a leader and sharing the, hey, like you're our first W-2 employee. Give us a little bit of grace here. We're gonna have some bumps in the road, but guess what? We're gonna make sure that with your help, because you can get in the employer, the team member to be a part of the solution, right? I mean, in the corporate world, I don't know if you ever had anybody tell you this, but my boss came to me because I just got into like a director of HR role for an international company that was owned by Barclays initially, and my boss Kevin's like, Scott, he goes, don't throw up all over my desk. He goes, when you come to me, I want 3 solutions, right? 3 solutions. And so that's always stuck with me. That was back in 2011. So it's been 12, 13 years now for me. And so every time, and I encourage my team members, you're free to make mistakes, but if you got a problem, rather than coming to me and throwing up on my desk, give me 3 solutions. What would you do if you own the company? And then we talk through it. And then as we go through that process, I begin to trust them more. Again, it's that trust and verify in the beginning. I trust them more. And then eventually they don't need to really ask me anything, right? I mean, it's a whole part of the process. Now you still want to have checks and balances in place. And I'm still a big proponent as you're building the company and putting standard operating procedures in place that you can rinse and repeat. But again, Tim, as owners of the business, we don't need to do that. Like Dennis, our recruiting and sales manager at Fortitude HR Solutions, he came in and within 2 months wrote our entire recruiting manual. Anytime we bring on a new recruiter, anytime we work with a client, this is what we do. And it's 52 pages long and we're good to go. So I didn't have to do it. You can empower your team members to be a part of it. Now I've reviewed it. We've tweaked some of it, but they're the people that are doing the jobs every single day, not us. Right. So empowering them to be part of the solution, I think, is super important.
And really promotes the taking ownership of the role.
Amen. Yep.
Yeah, Scott, it's like great signs of great managers, right? Like I had the manager that I worked for the longest time in my corporate career, tons of respect for the guy, but he used to do the same thing, right? I'd come, I remember I came to him a couple times and he finally just was like, "Hey man, these are just complaints. You're just complaining. Like,
Mhm.
where's the options, right? Come to me with options. I'll help you pick one, right?
Yep.
I want to see solutions. It's fine to come vent from time to time, but
Right.
follow that up with a couple of options on what to do next, right?
That's
And
right.
that's always kind of stuck with me. And then one other thing you said a minute ago that I think is huge, and Tim, I think we saw some of this in Hawaii. But there's a lot of folks out there kind of starting their own business. What was it called for a while? Great Resignation, right?
Oh yeah, the
Everybody's
Great
leaving
Resignation, August
everybody's
2021.
but what but what you're seeing is folks get out there and they're like, man, I started my own company. It's not like what I thought at all. I'm working more than I ever have, right? It's like they're surprised. And the whole Rome wasn't built in a day thing. It's like, did you think you were going to step into a new company and work 3 hours a day? I mean, no, it takes time. Exactly like you said. Most guys that I've ever seen, they work their tails off for a little while, get it up and stabilize, and then it's like, how do I get out of my business, right? Like,
Mhm.
how do I get out of the day to day?
Mhm.
Because now they've got it to the point where they do need to step away and let their employees feel empowered. To your point, right? Is that kind of what you see in like the
Yeah.
normal life cycle?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, like, and Tim Bratz, I'll give him all the credit. He says this and he's 100% right. Like, when you have revenue that's being generated for your business, revenue will solve a lot of the problems. Like, there's still a lot of problems, that happen in the beginning of a business life cycle, but revenue allows you then to be able to hire maybe you're an assistant, maybe as your first employee or team member, or maybe, like, depending upon your business, it might be like a salesperson to help you generate more revenue. And then as the revenue comes in, then you can start stabilizing things. In the real estate world, it's usually, I say, like an assistant or, an admin person that's going to help. I look at things and I measure, and this is not meant to be a negative exercise, but is it a $10 item, $100 item, 1,000, or a $10,000 item? And how am I spending my time? So I do like a time inventory with a lot of our coaching and clients and consulting clients. And if we're doing a bunch of stuff as owners of the business that are $10 and $100, we really need to hire someone like as an office admin or office assistant that can take on those roles and responsibilities. I should be focused on the thousand and the $10,000 activity. And so with that, like when we do this time, study, we'll help create the job description based upon someone doing like a time audit for an entire week, Monday through Friday, 9 to 9 o'clock at night, personal as well as work, and just where do you spend your time? And it's good to reflect. I think really strong, leaders are really good at emotional intelligence and having self-awareness and understanding what does that look like. And a lot of people miss the mark on that. And so if we can figure those things out and we can hire the admin person to help us generate more revenue or close more deals, if it's on the real estate side, we can then generate more revenue and we can continue building out the team. Building out teams is not easy, and some people are really good at it. I love doing it. I've been very fortunate to work on a lot of high performing teams. But you're 100% right, Tim. And Tim, like, there's a huge need for this and I think not only in the real estate investing space, but in small businesses in general. That's why, and this is a little bit of a self-promotion plug for us, but we kind of, we have our Fortitude HR Solutions where we do our consulting. We do a lot more like one-on-one stuff, but we're switching our model starting in October, and we've started a new business called Impact Alliance with clients of ours, Evo and Taylor Pereira, my wife and I have. And we're putting on a business retreat in Cancun, Mexico at a luxury resort. And we're going to focus on three things. We're going to focus on people, we're going to focus on process, and we're going to focus on profits. And then after that event, we're going to put workshops on once a month that will either focus on the people, we'll focus on the operations, focus on sales, marketing, customer service, that will focus on accounting or finance, or focus on leadership and mindset. And the idea behind that is, like, in our current consulting model or coaching model, like one-on-one, I only can, get in front of so many people. If I can do a small group setting, 15 to 20 people, I can impact a lot more people. And because, I'm a faith-filled guy, and because of my near-death experience, I feel like I have a greater call and responsibility now to give back and help more help other people and create a bigger impact. So Evo and Taylor approached us about this idea. I've been working with Evo and Taylor since January of 20. I've helped them grow their business. I think they were doing about 4.5 million when we started. Last year they did 22 million. This year they're on pace to do about 30. I helped them with an acquisition of another business last year. And so there's a lot of other things we want to do with Impact Alliance because, I'm sure if you watch on social media, all the gurus and the rage right now, during the pandemic, it was crypto, it was e-com stores. Now it's buying businesses, right? And again, great play, but you got to know what you're doing and you got to do your due diligence and you got to figure out like the change management and the integration and all those things. So we found that to be a good solution for the market, Tim, because there is a huge need for it. And really nobody's doing it other than like Cardone does it to some degree with Cardone Ventures. But Evo and Taylor went through their process and they've gone through some traction stuff and they've gone through my process that I do normally, like on a 2-day deep dive. And just from their mouths, they said that we provide way more value and more tangible products and key deliverables than they got with the other 2 training programs. So, we're kind of mirroring some of that and we're creating our own version of what does that look like for small businesses and how do we take a company that did $1 million and how do we get them to be a $10 million company and walking with them along that journey.
Got it. No, I enjoy. I appreciate the shameless plug because I'm actually like writing that down, like Cancun. Like
doing those type of events and destinations is always a good time too.
Well, but at the same time too, right? Like, so, Tim and I've stood up. We have 2 companies we've stood up, right? And we're here and we know we want to be here. So, these are the types of things like just sitting here now that I'm like, okay, this is something we probably need, right? And then, looking at like Tim, when we were in Hawaii, we met and we did the personality surveys.
And, the culture index, which I thought was incredible.
Yeah. So
what did you guys score as? I'm curious, if you don't mind sharing.
I'm an enterprise.
I don't remember what I was, but I was high on patience and like high in B and C. Oh, I don't have mine.
I got mine right here.
I love it.
I'm an enterpriser.
I forgot what I was. It said I was a debater. And I was like, wait a second. That's not true. I am not a debater.
You should be an attorney then, Tim.
No, not at all. No,
he's debating with his score.
Yeah, that's right. I was very high on patience and like people skills. Moderate on like kind of like the dominance trait, the A trait, and very, very low in the completionist trait. I'm sure I'm butchering those a little bit. But funny enough, Tim and I were both low in that. And we're like, we need a VP of ops because we need somebody because both of us will get it to like 50 to 80% good enough. But we need somebody that's going to take it from that 80 to 100%, right?
To go execute it. Yep.
Yeah.
Take your vision and be the implementer. And it makes sense. Very cool.
Right.
Yeah. And I like those personality assessments. I think they're good resources and tools, but I don't think they take the place for the human aspect or the leadership, right? Because some people know how to unfortunately manipulate those assessments. And I don't know if you've taken any other ones. I like DISCs. I don't know if you've ever taken DISC, but it sounds like Tim Vitale, it sounds like you're probably a D and an I or an ID kind of thing.
I am a D and I. Yep.
So, so I like that as the assessment, but predictive index, strength finder, 16 personalities, Myers-Briggs, culture index. Yeah. There's a ton of different ones that are out there, but I think people use those sometimes as a crutch and they don't want to spend the time to get to know the people, or they make hiring decisions based upon those things. And you got to be really, really careful. Here's the HR tip. Those things can get you in trouble with the EEOC, the Equal Employment Opportunities Commission. Tim Vest, I'm sure your wife knows all about that. And so with that, just make sure you don't base your hiring decision solely off of those personality assessments. Yeah. You don't want to put people in a box or wrongfully hire or discriminate against somebody. So,
Yeah. Vitale, as Vitale said, my wife's in HR, right? And she's a big fan of the DISC stuff as well. So, But speaking of that, she keeps me out of trouble quite a bit. It's like I'll go, hey, I'm thinking about having this conversation with somebody, and she's like, maybe you ought to tweak it like this, pivot it over here a little bit, because man, like Scott, like you can get in trouble real fast just by saying the intent is the same, but the way you deliver the message, right?
And I think that comes with more time, being a leader and practicing and filling your mind with, good books and reading good authors and listening to podcasts and surrounding yourself with the right people, right? Like I'm a huge fan of Simon Sinek. I don't know if that was a question, Tim and Tim. I usually get asked on podcasts, like, who do I follow or what books do I read? But like Simon Sinek, anything the guy writes, I think is gold. And so, to start with why, understanding that, or Leaders Eat Last, those are two of my favorite books. Or I love Jim Rohn and the 12 Pillars, and just about like life lessons. But you're 100% right, Tim Best. The way that we approach a situation and how we do that, and the words that we say and the delivery, but also the timing of when we say that. This is why it's so important and critical for leaders to know their team. Like if you know that Fridays is the best time to have a conversation with the team member, even if you got to give bad news, do it on Friday. Don't wait till Monday when somebody's in a horrible mood because they got a case of the Mondays, right? And they don't want to be at work. Don't have that conversation then. So again, it's about knowing your team and knowing, again, what's the best way to deliver the message. And that comes with experience and time.
Yeah, really, really good points, man. And I feel like I'm hearing the same thing I've been hearing from my wife forever. But it's funny, like you hear it from somebody else, and it kind of registers a little bit more, right?
And my wife gives me crap for that all the time. She's like,
Mine
if somebody
too.
else tells you what I've been telling you, you recognize it. I'm like, and what's your point?
Yeah.
My wife tells me the same thing. And my wife's part owner of our business. She's like, you'll listen to someone else, but you won't listen to me. I'm like, well, they just said it differently, babe. I love you, but they just said it differently.
Yeah.
Happens all the time, right?
Oh, man. You're not alone in that conversation.
Nope.
So, all right, Scott, we're out of time today, but I really appreciate this has been a really fun conversation. And thanks for the reminders of how to have different difficult conversations and what to focus on as a leader, and implementing systems and processes and all of the things. It's always good to hear that refresher, because like everyone knows it, right? It's sitting in the back of the head, but bringing it to the forefront frequently is a good idea, especially as you start to bring on W-2 employees and things like that. So thanks again. Always appreciate it. If people want to get in touch with you, how should they reach out?
They can go to our website, fortitudeHRsolutions.com. They can follow us on Instagram at Scott and Laura Hanis. I'm on Facebook. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm usually readily available. I'm not like one of those gurus that sits there and has someone else answer. So whatever I can do to help and add value, I want to do that. So if I can help you or help your organization, feel free to reach out.
Awesome. Hey, thanks so much, Scott. And talk to you again next time.
Sounds good. Thank you, gentlemen. I appreciate the opportunity. Have a good day.
Thanks, Scott. Take care, folks.